Happy Monday, and welcome back to the Lorden Arts channel. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for spending some time with me here today. Case Cracked is the show where we look into a mystery and what are the critical pieces that help solve that mystery. We'd like to give a big thank you to James Renner's Philosophy of Crime for cluing us in on today's case. You can follow them on Twitter at Crime Philosophy. This one is called Finding Dad's Killer. Life in Clayton, Idaho in 1980 was different compared to most places. This small canyon town that sits in the Sawtooth Valley on the Salmon River boasted a silver mine that employed 75 people year-round, as well as forestry service jobs and ranchers. They even had their own Little League team, but life here was still fairly primitive. Most children in town grew up with limited plumbing and had to work from a young age just to help their family make ends meet. This is where 52-year-old Dan Wooley grew up, and he was more industrious than most. To help supplement his parents' income, he would catch free-range cattle and milk them, selling the milk for extra money. His hard work ethic had served him well in life, and on September 22, 1980, he still lived in Clayton, now with his wife and their sons. It was his 28th wedding anniversary, and he had spent the day with friends building a garage on the family's property. At the end of the long day, he decided to drive into town and have a cold beer before calling it a night. As he left, he asked his 19-year-old son Brett to come with him, but the young man had recently been involved in a motorcycle accident, and even though he rarely turned down the offer, just didn't feel up to the trip. A few hours later, his mother was happily taking care of chores around the house while Brett read a dirt bike magazine. There was a knock at the door. Thinking nothing of it, he kept reading until he heard his mother scream. When Brett made it downstairs, he saw her and police at the front door. Someone had shot his father. When officers and paramedics arrived at the sports club bar, they found Dan Wooley dead in the parking lot from a single gunshot wound to the head. Patrons claimed that his friend and local resident Walter Mason had pulled the trigger. While everyone in town liked Dan, no one, except for Dan, liked Mason. As a matter of fact, Dan was probably Mason's only friend. Mason was new to Clayton and had only lived there for a few years after he moved from Las Vegas. He was even rumored to have worked for Las Vegas mobster and casino owner Benny Binion during his time there. Mason learned to use his fists to solve all his problems at an early age. At just 8 years old, his parents were killed in an automobile accident, and when his older brother failed to care for him, he was sent to live with a farmer who matched him in bare-fisted fights. A crack shot with a pistol and rifle, in the 1960s he was one of the top bareback riders in the country on the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association circuit. That was where he sustained an injury to his face that left him paralyzed on the left side after he was stomped by a horse. No one knew what had brought the man to Clayton, but rumor said it was because he was running from the law after his time working for the mob. Soon, local, state, and federal law enforcement were on the case looking for Mason. Witness reports from that night say that he entered the sports club bar between 9:30 and 10:30 p.m. and immediately began fighting with his wife Candace. He accused her of being unfaithful to him and, in a swear-filled tirade, accused Dan Wooley of being the man she was involved with. The bartender quickly stepped in and told Mason to keep it quiet or leave. He chose to leave, but returned soon after, only to start the fight again. He was quickly pulled outside by the bartender and a young man. When they hit the parking lot, the real fight began. Dan decided to go out and to try to break it up himself and see if he could calm Mason down. After a small tussle, he was able to do just that, but Mason wasn't done. Before Dan could go back inside, Mason went to his truck and drew 2 pistols, a .22 Smith & Wesson revolver and a .222 single shot. As the 2 men walked toward him to try to dissuade him, Mason fired a single shot, hitting Dan in the head, killing him instantly. He then entered the bar and began shooting. One man was hit in the shoulder, other shots hit a jukebox, pool table, and window before patrons were able to restrain Mason and take his guns away. In the confusion that followed, before police and paramedics arrived, Mason slipped away from the bar only to walk across the street to the only other drinking establishment in town called the Silver Bar. He walked in, ordered a drink, and told those present, "I have just killed a man." When his drink was finished, he walked outside to a telephone booth where he made a call and, after finishing, left on foot. He never returned to retrieve his truck at the sports club, and no one in Clayton ever saw him again. The sheriff's office received the call at 11:22 p.m. When they arrived, the young man was taken to the hospital for his bullet wound to his shoulder, and Mrs. Mason was taken into protective custody. Dan, however, was pronounced dead in the parking lot. From there, police and officers from the Fish and Game Authority took up the chase and set up roadblocks on all the roads leading out of town. Before they concluded their investigation, the FBI would become involved as well. Nothing they did brought results, and every lead led nowhere. They simply could not find Mason. As the investigation stretched from days to weeks, rumors started to fly in the small town. Some people thought that Dan's sons had found Mason first, killed him, and left his body in the hills. Others thought the cowboy had called in a favor from the mob and been spirited away and hidden. One point that everyone agreed on was that Mason was a mean drunk. The local sheriff was quoted as saying, "Walt was a hell of a nice guy until he got on the whiskey." For years, local law enforcement and the FBI pursued Mason until there was just nothing left to do. No lead panned out, and it seemed as if he had just dropped off the face of the earth. Dan's family grieved his loss, but learned to move on with their lives. None of them held out any hope of ever finding their father's killer. Nearly 40 years after the murder, Brett Wooley's girlfriend, Steen, was contacted out of the blue by a woman in Eastland, Texas. The woman had run across a Facebook post that detailed the murder and featured a picture of Mason. The murderer's history felt familiar to her, and the man pictured looked a lot like her mother's common-law husband, a man named Walter Allison. The two quickly formed a friendship and started to swap information. They became convinced that Allison was Mason when Steen told her boyfriend, Brett, about a leather-bound photo album that Allison had from his days on the pro rodeo circuit. Brett remembered seeing the same album in Mason's home in Clayton. Local authorities were alerted, and on October 13, 2019, investigators from Idaho traveled to Texas to confront the now 87-year-old man at his home. When questioned, he readily admitted that he was Dan Wooley's killer, but said that everything had been done in self-defense, a statement that made no sense to those involved. His fingerprints soon verified his identity, and he was charged with murder in the first degree and transported back to Idaho. Unfortunately, Dan's family will probably never get the answers they seek. After pleading not guilty to charges, Mason's health quickly deteriorated in jail, and he was soon hospitalized. He's since been transferred to a long-term care facility and has been declared not competent to stand trial. He's also not offering any other explanation as to why he killed the one guy in town that actually liked him. Brett and his family are now trying to pick up the pieces of their lives and move forward. Quote, "I didn't want him to be found. I was fine with it like it was. It's like it just happened yesterday all over again," he said. To take his mind off the issue, he's decided to preserve some of his father's hardworking legacy by operating a dude ranch in the Sawtooth Valley where people can come to learn ranching, how to break steer, and drive tractors for harvest. There are now only 7 people who live in Clayton, and Brett hopes that bringing tourists to the area and showing them their way of life will forever preserve and embody the strong ethics of his father and the town that his father loved. Case cracked. I would like to thank Fox News, the Post-Register, East Idaho News, CNN.com, 9news.com Australia, and of course, Christy Arnhart for researching and writing up today's case. And here she is to chat with us about it right now. Hey, Christy.
Hey,
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you so much for the hard work on another episode of Case Cracked here. This one really at the end hits this tone, just the grief in it. You know, to think of a family going through this, losing someone so important in such, it's kind of a silly way. It's just really heartbreaking on that level. I do appreciate that he wanted to continue his father's legacy in that way. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that's really nice. I mean, it'll not only help their family heal, but those are actual skills that I don't feel people need to forget anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm wondering if there's almost like something, I don't know if there could be a little memorial or like a little, a bunch of pictures up on a wall somewhere, something to just kind of help him with that. But it's really the whole angle about the family never really knowing if this guy was ever going to be caught, and then getting to the point where they're comfortable with that, and then hearing from Brett that it's almost like he didn't want the guy to be found because now it's opening it all up again, and they're having to relive it. And thankfully they didn't have to go through the full court process, because at that point you're not just reliving what you went through. Now you're hearing about these terrible details. On top of that, you're getting new information about what was going on at that time.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm kind of thankful. I don't know. I'm kind of split on it. I'm thankful they know what happened, which they kind of knew early on, but I'm thankful they have the person caught. But then we hit this weird condition about, well, he really can't be tried. But it's strange because it seems like, at least from Brett's point of view, that he's really not driving for that anyway. And you're talking about, an 87-year-old man at this point. So what is justice at this time? I don't know.
No, I don't either, especially once the family's made peace.
Yeah, yeah. So some interesting things I just wanted to touch on. The phone call. So he goes into this other bar, he announces he shot someone, and then he goes outside and places a phone call. I would think that phone call should be pretty important in terms of tracking him down. Do you have any thoughts on, I mean, this guy just disappeared.
He did. And for somebody leaving on foot like that, you didn't hear any reports of hitchhikers or anything in the area. I know that the report said he called his attorney from that telephone, but either the attorney got him out of there or he contacted somebody he knew in the mob and they took care of it. Because
Oh,
you
that's
don't just
interesting.
disappear that thoroughly on your own.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So he contacted an attorney at some point?
Well, it was told, and I don't know how they would have even found this out, but one of the news reports said that he called his attorney from that phone and then disappeared.
Oh,
Well,
interesting.
first of all, how do you know he called the attorney? And even if he did, that man still could have been connected and got him out of there. Regardless, I feel like that phone call was his ticket.
That's what's weird. I mean, someone got him out of there, or he just happened to luck into hitchhiking and hitting the right car, and then that person never saw the news or never knew about the occurrence, or I don't know. I don't know.
Out of luck. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy to think about because he just disappeared.
Yeah. 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 It's very, very strange. Of course, and then we hit this issue of when he is found, he's 87 years old, declared not fit to stand for trial. But even outside of that, I always find it tough when we're talking about prosecuting cases of this age. And I don't necessarily mean the age of the person that's being prosecuted. I just mean how long it's been. I mean, this happened back in 1980. The information for a case like this, relatively straightforward. I would think pretty solid in terms of them being able to put it together just based off maybe the witness reports and the police records from the time, if those survived. And you never know. We occasionally hear these stories about, oh, there was a hurricane and all the police records were destroyed. But assuming that the records were still in place, this probably would have been a pretty easy prosecution. When it comes to the witness statements, if they want to bring some of those people into court, that's where it gets a little tricky because some of those people could have passed away at this point.
Mhm.
But outside of that, yeah, I struggle a little bit with the thought of, prosecuting someone that's 87. I kind of see both sides of it. It's like, you want him to pay in some way. And even if that means he goes through this whole court process, he has to face a judge. He hears from the judge and the jury that they find him guilty, and he gets put in jail. Even if he dies the next day, is that still justice? Is that worth it all at that point? And I don't know that, for most families, I would think so. I would think that just for them to get to that point of, hey, he was incarcerated and yeah, whatever, he passed away the next day. But in this one, I'm a little mixed, specifically because of Brett's comments. Brett's comments are very much like he just didn't want to relive this. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's a real tough one. You have any thoughts on prosecuting an 87-year-old?
that it is tough. I mean, you have to have a total lack of empathy not to feel for the man, even after what he's done.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of clear cut on things like this. And regardless, he committed this crime, and it's very obvious that he did. He needs to pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like I wish they could figure out what was important to him in his life at this point and then find some way to stop him from having that. And for an 87-year-old, maybe it is time with his family or time with his grandchildren or something like that. And effectively putting him in jail would stop him from being able to access that. But with a guy like this,
Yeah.
who knows? I mean, it could be money or it could be things that he's collected in his life. I wish there was something a bit better almost than just figuring out, oh, we're just going to throw you in a box for the few
I know
years
it
that
would be
you.
nice to be. Well, I mean, a man like this, he's not going to live there for very long anyway. So at
Yeah.
least with that type of punishment, you would know that the family is getting some kind of satisfaction, instant satisfaction, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your hard work on this one, Christy. We really appreciate you. And we have some other people to thank right now. Thank you, new Patreon supporters Lindsay C., Amy CHS, Rebecca DeMarco, Sharon Marmon, and Lisa Bell. Also, thank you to Hillary Brown and S for increasing your pledges. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit lordnarts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, or buy merchandise. All of it keeps us here with limited commercials, and we really appreciate your support. Remember, you can get an extra Lord and Art story every week on the Seriously Mysterious podcast. A new episode is coming tomorrow and every Tuesday after that. Visit seriouslymysterious.com and don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcatchers. Or I'll see you again on YouTube on Wednesday with a new episode of Searchlight right here on the Lord and Arts channel.